The journeyman. Do you actually know what a journeyman is? These fellows are rarely seen nowadays. No, they are not vagrants or other shady characters shying away from the light. To this day, journeymen who travel around have actually only survived in one single trade, namely carpentry. You surely know what carpenters are. They are the craftsmen who build the roof when a new house is constructed. More precisely, they build the part of the roof that is made of wood. It is also called a roof truss, even though it doesn't look like a truss for trousers, and you certainly can't sit on it. Such a poor journeyman did not have an easy life. But when he returned to his hometown after 3 years of traveling, that is, the town where he had completed his apprenticeship and passed his exams, he could be awarded the title of Master Craftsman. A journeyman, on the other hand, who did not go on the walls, the traditional journey, could not become a true master of his craft. Today, I want to tell you about a hard-working craftsman named Fridolin, because some very strange things happened to him during his travels. Many years ago, when we were sitting together over a good glass of wine, he told me about it, but only under the seal of secrecy. That is why I have to ask you not to tell anyone, because it is absolutely confidential. Fridolin was a bright lad and had already given his master much pleasure during his 3-year apprenticeship. He passed his journeyman's examination with flying colors. Then he said goodbye to his parents, friends and master, put on his traditional journeyman's attire, and set off on foot on the long journey that was to last 3 years. Fridolin had decided to try his luck in Belgium and France because he wanted to learn more from the masters there. And he had heard a lot about these countries, their houses and buildings. During the first few days, he wandered merrily along, sometimes on one country road, sometimes on another. When he came to a town, he stayed overnight in a hostel, but if it wasn't cold, he sometimes slept outdoors. It was a long march from Cologne, but he wanted to first present himself to one of the masters in Liège. Then, perhaps 6 months later, he wanted to go to Charleroi, then to Reims in France, and who knows, maybe even as far as Paris. During his 3 years of traveling, if he was very lucky, he could work for 6 masters and expand his knowledge, because a journeyman had to stay with each master for at least 6 months before he could move on. The master then provided the journeyman with a modest room and food. In addition, he naturally received a fair wage and, at the end, a certificate of his newly acquired skills. But there was no room for homesickness because Fridolin could not return home for another 3 years. As he was walking along the country road towards Liège, someone suddenly said to him, "Well, you've got a mighty stride. It is hard to keep up with you." Fridolin was a little startled and turned around, but at first he couldn't see anyone. Only when he looked down at the ground did he see a little man with an oversized nose and a pointed cap. Now Fridolin stopped in his tracks. He was quite sure that he had been walking alone until then. So, who was this strange creature next to him? "Who are you?" "I am Olgram," said the strange creature. "And you are a dwarf." "Of course I'm not a dwarf. Do I have to apologize for being a troll now?" "I am Olgram, a genuine Scandinavian troll. Do you have a problem with that?" "Who is in such a bad mood?" asked Fridolin kindly. Of course, Fridolin didn't know that trolls are usually in a bad mood. "It is true. And who are you, journeyman?" The troll Olgram had immediately recognized that Fridolin was a journeyman. You could tell by his traveling clothes. "I am Fridolin, a journeyman carpenter. And what are you doing here so far away from Scandinavia?" "Oh, my brothers have given me a difficult task, and I don't know whether I should continue further south. It is so unbearably hot here." Meanwhile, they had moved on, and Fridolin and Olgram were talking. From a distance, it looked very strange, the small, chubby Olgram with his tiny shuffling steps and the tall Fridolin with his walking stick. "And now?" Olgram wanted to know after a while. "What are you planning to do now, wandering journeyman?" "I have just set off on my journey. My first stop is to be Liège, then Charleroi in about 6 months, then Reims, and maybe I'll make it to Paris. And what do you want in all these beautiful places? Olgram continued. Work! I want to learn from foreign masters and perfect my knowledge. What kind of knowledge? What kind of masters? Well, you have a lot of questions. I am a carpenter, and I am on a 3-year journey that I just started in Cologne. A carpenter? Someone who can work with wood? How lucky I am, exclaimed the little troll next to Fridolin. How lucky? What can you work with? It is a long story, and I'll run out of breath if I walk too fast. Let's take a break and I'll tell you everything. I am sure you will be interested. And so they took a break. They sat down in a meadow, and Fridolin produced a piece of bread and a piece of cheese and a bottle of wonderfully fresh spring water, which he was happy to share with his traveling companion. The troll ate heartily and then began to tell his story. I already told you I am Olgram, a troll from Scandinavia, or more precisely from Norway. Up there, we are very skilled at working with iron. I could forge a knife for your plane that would never go blunt, or skillfully turn a drill that could drill all kinds of hole sizes, even an axe that could fell any tree with a single blow. But that is just by the by, so we trolls up there in the north are really good with iron and steel, but now we have a huge problem. The thing is supposed to take place in 2 years, and we no longer have a meeting place. The ding? What is the ding? Fridolin hadn't been listening very attentively. He silently thought about the wonderful tools the troll had just mentioned. No, you fool, not thing. It is the thing. It is the gathering of all Norwegian trolls once every 100 years. We used to have a beautiful old assembly hall, but it was completely destroyed and washed away in the great storm surge last century. And in almost 100 years, it never occurred to you to build a new one. Yes, you smart aleck. But if you let me finish quickly, instead of constantly interrupting me, you would already know more. All right, go on. We tried everything. But as skilled as we are in working with ore, metal and steel, we are just as unskilled as the little people are in working with wood. A strong carpenter's apprentice on his travels would be just what we need. Oh, so that is what you had in mind. I'll just pop over to Norway and build a meeting hall, throw my years of traveling out the window, and that's it. No more master's title. Holy cement bag. How can you be so narrow-minded? The troll grumbled impatiently. What if I promised you that you wouldn't lose a single day of your travels, even though the construction would certainly take a year? How would that work? I'll let you in on a secret. I will stop time, and when the assembly hall is finished, you will be standing right here again, at the same moment you agreed to it. That sounds like a tremendous adventure. But I can't. On my travels, I get all my tools from my master. You see, I have nothing with me except my folding rule and a small spirit level. We will provide you with all the tools you need, of the very best quality, and you can keep them afterwards. You would also receive a wage for the year, of course. Then we still have the problem of distance. I'm on my way to Liège. If I had to walk to Norway now, I'd be on the road for months. You can't carry enough bread and cheese to keep you from starving on the way. Were those your last concerns? Yes. Fridolin thought for a moment, but he couldn't think of anything else. Well then, listen up. Give me your hand. Fridolin held it out to him, and the troll Olgram snapped his fingers. No sooner had the snap faded away than they were no longer sitting on the spring meadow by the country road on the way to Liège. But it was freezing cold, and everything was covered in snow. They had arrived in Norway. Gentlemen, you know how to travel? Fridolin could hardly believe his eyes. Come, I'll show you where the hall for our thing is to be built. Then I'll introduce you to the others, and you can explain to us what tools you need. Afterwards, There will be a hearty supper, and tomorrow morning we can get started. All the tools will be ready by then." Fridolin couldn't stop marveling. All the tools made in just one night? This is how Fridolin's year with the trolls began, for whom he was to build a meeting hall for the thing. Well over 1,000 trolls were expected, so the hall had to be quite large. It also had to be still standing for the next thing and the one after that, so he had to build a good, sturdy, safe hall that would last for centuries. Over time, he got to know most of the trolls by name and learned to pronounce their funny names reasonably well. There were, above all, the trolls Ekgathgath, Fortzor the Farter, Forgath, Unu, Gonuharath, Zorag, Gogath, Little Goliath, Olbgu, Ugath, Forarath the Collector, the ever-tired Golulzora, Golnuhagzor, Gagath, Eksh, Golnoshiath, Gaiath, Ganu, Forforol Gathnosh, Fornosh, Zoragush, the stutterer Gaag, Uhiathnoshmash, Olbnosh, Golnoshmash, Ush, Ekiathlog, and the old master Golgath. He owed the old master and his smithy tools that one could only dream of. The troll Olgram had not exaggerated. Fridolin had never held such good steel in his hands. The trolls helped him wherever they could, and if one alone could not manage, then 10 more would join in. Fridolin even built a small tower with a real belfry, so that the trolls could summon everyone to the thing when the time came. The bell came from Master Golgath's forge and had the magical power of being heard throughout Scandinavia, if you were a troll. Fridolin was given good food. His clothes were kept clean, mended, repaired, and replaced. And soon the year was over and the assembly hall was built. Fridolin had built it in a circle so that no one could sit in the front row, because the trolls were a bit quarrelsome among themselves. Everyone was satisfied, and one Sunday morning, Olgram came to him, followed by the other trolls. "Master Fridolin, we may call you that, even if it will be 3 years before you hold the master's title in black and white. You have done us trolls a great service. Now it is up to us to keep our promises." One troll stepped forward with a small chest. "In this chest are 100 gold ducats, which shall be the reward for your masterful work." Another troll stepped forward with a small handcart. "And here are the finest tools for your profession that human eyes have ever seen." Then Olgram stepped very close to Fridolin. "Now, give me your hand, and we will begin our journey home." But Fridolin wanted to say goodbye to everyone individually first, and he thanked them warmly. "Dear trolls, you have become like a second family to me. I thank you for a wonderful year, beautiful experiences, and I thank you for the trust you have placed in me. But I would like to say one more thing. Without all of your help, the hall would not have turned out the way it will stand for centuries to come. Hopefully we will see each other again in this life." Then he stepped up to Olgram, who took him by the hand and snapped his fingers. In an instant they were back on the green meadow by the road to Liège. Olgram had kept his word. He really was a wizard. It seemed as if not a second had passed since they had been sitting here. Now, however, the small chest and the handcart with tools were with them. They were unmistakable proof that Fridolin had not been dreaming. "Olgram, now I have a problem. I can't go on my travels with all these things. What would the masters think of a poor journeyman with 100 gold ducats and these excellent tools?" "I hadn't thought of that, but that's no problem at all. I'll cast a spell on them so that only you can see the chest and the tools in the handcart. So when you come back here in 3 years or so, you can take everything and set off on your journey home to beautiful Cologne." "That would be wonderful." They shook hands. Olgram stroked the chest and the handcart briefly. "Right, from now on, they will be invisible to others, and no matter what happens here, when you pass by this spot, they will be there for you." Then Fridolin knelt down, hugged his troll Olgram. They said goodbye, and suddenly the troll was gone. Fridolin picked up his walking stick again and went to Liège. There he found a good master who, however, could hardly teach him anything new. 6 months later, he arrived in Charleroi and found another good master with whom he stayed for a whole year. Then he moved on to Reims. By now, word of his good work had spread, and the masters wanted to keep him for themselves, but he only stayed for 6 months and even went on to Paris. Here he learned from a carpenter who was working on a cathedral. Soon the 3 years were over, and he set off on the long journey home. When he was finally on the road from Liège to Cologne, he soon came to the place where the small chest and the finest tools were waiting for him. Indeed, but who do you think was sitting on the handcart with his legs dangling? His old friend Olgram. Well, you took your time. Olgram, what a pleasure to see you. So, how was your thing? Yes, that is actually why I am here. The thing was wonderful. All the trolls really liked your hall. They decided that a few of us should learn a little more from the humans. That's why I am curious to get to know your city now. A troll in Cologne? I can't imagine that, even with the best will in the world. Well, we will be careful and cautious so that no one sees us. But we have to learn the various crafts, because as we have seen, it is not enough to just know how to work with iron and steel. So Olgram accompanied his friend Fridolin to Cologne. In Cologne, he was indeed never seen, except for one time. The trolls also remained unknown in Cologne, but there were rumors in the pubs and workshops about brownies.